Well, Gaza has been cut off since Hamas took over the Strip in June last year. All the crossings out of Gaza are tightly controlled by Israel, and in the last few days they've been closed completely. The best chance Gazans have of reaching the outside world is through the Rafah border crossing with Egypt. Most of Rafah lies within Gaza, while a small area is part of Egypt. Al-Jazeera's Jackie Rowland reports now on the day's dramatic events.
The siege is broken. If Gaza is the biggest prison on the planet, this is the biggest jailbreak. Now that people have found a way out, there's no stopping them. It happened during the night. A series of explosions along the border brought the concrete blocks crashing down. The wall has fallen. These really are quite extraordinary scenes. It feels as if the whole of Gaza is flooding across the border into Egypt. This is what happens when you put people under unbearable pressure for a long time. Sooner or later, they have to break out. A day ago, it was no man's land. Now it's become a massive bazaar. The Egyptian border police just stand by and watch as people go on their shopping spree, bringing into Gaza everything that Israel has been keeping out. Like cement, for instance. Not a sack has come in for months. Now it's entering in cartloads. I'm going to build myself a new house, this man told us. You can't find cement in Gaza. Hamas forces too are taking advantage of the opening. Who knows what they're bringing in on the back of their trucks? The money changers didn't waste any time coming over to Gaza. All this shopping requires cash, lots of it. In a matter of seconds, Israeli shekels turn into Egyptian pounds. The Egyptian border town of Rafah has never seen anything like it. Palestinians crowding the forecourts of petrol stations. If Israel won't let them have fuel, they'll just come and get it from Egypt. The lines are so long you'd almost think the shop is giving stuff away. Nothing special on sale here, just everyday goods. But for the people of Gaza, it's like a treasure trove, and they're stuffing full every bag. The wall could not have been breached without at least the tacit agreement of the Egyptians. The question now, how long will the border remain open? Jackie Rowland, Al Jazeera, Rafah.
Well, earlier, the deposed Palestinian Prime Minister Ismail Haniyeh told Al Jazeera that ousting Hamas from power has only worsened the situation in Gaza. And he said all sides must now work together to achieve their common aims.
If we are submitted with an initiative or scenario, we are ready to examine it seriously, based on our true desire to end embargo and to reinforce the national partnership. Excluding us from power and not recognising Palestinian legitimacy will be a failure. Counting on the defeat of the Palestinian people in Gaza is a waste of time. Their experience has proven that all types of confrontation with the Palestinians will be defeated, because the Palestinian people are determined to have decent and dignified lives and will continue their struggle towards liberating their land and towards having a life similar to the rest of the world.
Meanwhile, in Israel, the country's most influential leaders have been holding an annual summit just north of Tel Aviv.
Well, the Foreign Ministry has insisted the Rafah crossing is Egypt's responsibility, saying it expects Cairo to solve the problem. While Prime Minister Ehud Olmert said Israel would not allow the residents of Gaza to live ordinary lives.
We will continue to strike at the leaders of terror in the Gaza Strip, even at the cost of the quality of the life of its residents. The orders regarding Gaza were given by me and with my full agreement. It is impossible under any conditions, in any situation, to create a humanitarian crisis. We will not harm food for children, medications for those that need it, and fuel for the institutions that are involved in the saving of human lives. But there is no justification and no basis to demand that we allow the residents of the Gaza Strip to live a normal life at a time when from their streets rockets and shells are fired into Sderot and in other communities in the south.
Well, it's been another volatile day for the world markets. Shares rose in Asia, but European stocks dropped again, despite Tuesday's dramatic interest rate cut in the US.
The president of Europe's central bank says he'll not follow with similar cuts for Europe. This is how the markets are looking at the moment. In New York, the Dow Jones has been fluctuating all day and is now trading up, but ever so slightly, at not even 0.1%, with just an hour to go before it closes. Earlier, London closed down just under 2.3% compared to Tuesday. Germany was also down by almost 5%, but Japan's Nikkei rallied, closing up by just over 2%. From London, Tim Friend has this.
A huge march through the centre of London. Unusually, it's police officers protesting about pay. The government's refused to give them the increase they want in an attempt to keep inflation down. While the markets are still extremely volatile, this demonstration is an indication of the challenges ahead. Across Europe, governments and investors are still nervous about the economic future.
Here in Britain, the Governor of the Bank of England has warned that the UK faces its greatest economic challenges for more than a decade, with rising inflation and slower growth. So far, the jobs market has remained buoyant, but amid the economic gloom, there have been some layoffs.
The British Prime Minister, Gordon Brown, is reported to be pushing for a meeting with his German, French and Italian counterparts to discuss banking regulation and ways to disclose banks' bad debts more quickly. It's an attempt to reassure investors because it was defaults on subprime mortgages in the US that kicked off this latest crisis. But European stocks have remained under pressure because, for the moment, the region's central banks will not follow the US in slashing interest rates.
We saw the effect of a rate cut in the States. It did galvanise the markets to some extent, and that is what is needed in Europe and the UK. And if we don't get a reasonable sized cut, then I think we will see more market turmoil.
Billionaire investor George Soros, regarded as a financial guru in Europe, says he believes it will now be difficult for the UK and US to avoid recession.
It is very serious, and it very much depends on how the authorities are going to handle it. And I'm afraid that at the moment, they don't have a proper understanding of what is involved. And so they are reacting too slowly and in the wrong way.
He said the US had kept interest rates too low for too long. Tim Friend, Al Jazeera, London.
Well, earlier I spoke to India's Minister for Commerce and Industry, Kamal Nath, who's at the World Economic Forum in Switzerland. I started by asking him about his initial reaction to the US economic meltdown.
I was surprised, and I think it was more sentiment, as we do know that stock markets are affected by sentiment, and in India the case was one of sentiment because all the economic fundamentals are very good. The ingredients towards the fundamentals are good. And today, well, we've had a big jump. So the sentiment, initial sentiment is losing its steam.
Much, of course, has been made in the past few years about the fact that India is strong enough to stand on its own. It doesn't need to be reliant on the US market. Yet the moment there was a fall in the US market, that did have an immediate effect in India. Perhaps it's not as strong, the economy, as India might hope.
No, that's not correct, because that is evident from the fact that this morning the stock market started going up again. There has been, India's growth has been domestic market driven and not export market driven. So really unbinding India from the United States is not there, because India was never bound to the United States economically. So the sentiment, I have been saying that there is going to be an effective sentiment, a sentiment of gloom, which sometimes sets in, which is not backed by any economic fundamentals, and that's exactly what's happening.
I was reading online a report by UBS early this month that stated that India is now the most overvalued market in Asia. Does that worry you at all, given the current economic situation worldwide?
It doesn't worry me at all, because if you look at the price-earnings ratios of the equities, they are still very good compared to any other the stock markets in Europe or in North America.